Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Sandra Peart, Dean of the Jepson School of Leadership Studies, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Finale. This is the event that bookends Prelude, which happened 2.5 years ago when we welcomed the class of 2016 to the Jepson School. Time has flown by. At this time, I'd like to ask the faculty and staff of the Jepson School to please stand. These are the professors who have inspired and asked your students, your daughters or sons, to do so much work over the last 2.5 years. And I know that they're going to continue to keep in touch with all of our students. Parents, families, friends, please know that we're so grateful for all that you've done to help your students be successful at the Jepson School of Leadership Studies. Let's give them a round of applause as well. And now, the class of 2016. 31 days ago, we gathered for senior banquet. And at that point, Dr. Hoyt let you know that 30 days ago we gathered. 31 days from then, you would graduate. And I'm sure you've been counting the days ever since. I know we have. And now it's a time to start thinking in terms of hours until you graduate. We have 62 majors in the class of 2016, and we have 5 minors. And we're so very proud of all of you. You've served on Honor Council, you've been RAs, you've given tours of the universities, you've been on student government associations, both at Richmond College, West Hampton, and of course at the Jepson School itself. You have been part of a university team that competed in the National Team Selling Competition. You've competed in the Ethics Bowl, which went to the Nationals again this year. You're now heading to various organizations and companies that include J.P. Morgan, Protiviti, Bloomingdale's, Deloitte, the Advisory Board Company, Oxion Partners, Today's Business, and so on. Some of you are going to graduate schools, Washington and Lee, Georgetown, Villanova, the University of Denver, the University of Virginia. You're going to now join over 1,000 extraordinary alumni from the Jepson School of Leadership Studies. Whatever you do in the future, we know that you will have the energy, the desire, and the education to make the world a better place. Please know that you're always welcome at the Jepson School. Come to lectures, keep in touch with us. And so now we're going to have a musical interlude. You may remember, those of you who were at the senior banquet, that we promised we would. Oliver Lee has come through, and so Oliver, Olivia Dalmage, Amelia Metrutz, and Matt Logan are going to come forward and perform for you. After that, we'll have a brief video that will help you reflect on your years at the Jepson School. And for those of you who are visiting and supporting your students, will help you understand just how special the Jepson School is. Thanks. I'm Sandra Peart, Dean of the Jepson School of Leadership Studies, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this, my favorite event of the year, finale.
Jepson is unique in a lot of different ways. First of all, it's the first leadership school of its type, but besides that, it's an incredible place where so many different kinds of people come together.
Jepson is special because we are a blend of students and professors from different backgrounds and perspectives.
Teachers make Jepson extremely special and unique because of their specializations. Two of them could teach the same class and they could be completely different, and that makes Jepson special.
What I think makes Jepson unique, besides the close-knit community, is how the professors foster a really open environment.
So what I find unique about the Jepson School is the small class sizes, which allows me to interact with my fellow classmates, professors, and the course material more than a regular class.
It allows you to study leadership in different cultural contexts.
It doesn't force students to narrow their focus to one field, but rather takes leadership and applies it to many different subjects.
I chose University of Richmond because of the Jepson program and because it was so unique. There's nothing really like it anywhere else in the country.
Beyond the academic side, I would say that Jepson is special because of the environment and the community that is formed here.
At a liberal arts university and at the Jepson School of Leadership Studies, we really work hard preparing our students to solve unscripted problems.
What I've learned from Jepson is that everyone is different. Everyone has their own unique strengths and abilities, and when all of these strengths and abilities are recognized and utilized purposefully, amazing things can happen.
I don't necessarily think about a specific idea or a lesson that I can take away, but more the people skills that I've gained through all of my classes and different experiences with Jepson.
I think the most important lesson that I've learned, and it will stick with me after graduation, has probably come from my peers. The ability to argue my own perspective, but also critically think and be open to others' perspectives and how they'll impact my own.
I think the greatest lesson I've learned throughout my education at Jepson is how to develop my beliefs and opinions in a way that's coherent, but more importantly, in a way that I can articulate them to other people.
One thing from Jepson that's going to stick with me is social conscience, which the school really fosters in its students. One of the biggest ideas that I think will continue to stick with me after graduation and in my future comes from my time in Dr. Gothel's Theories and Models class, and that idea is that of emotional intelligence and especially empathy. Something that I will remember is the idea of emotional intelligence in leadership, and I was able to see really firsthand how important it is for leaders to be emotionally intelligent in my internship, particularly when I would see judges sentence people both compassionately and authoritatively for drug offenses.
The leadership of an individual extends far beyond the self, and in order to be a successful leader, you have to be selfless in your actions and always work for the betterment of a group, even when it comes at your own expense.
The one lesson that I'll take back from Jepson School of Leadership is that everybody is different. They're coming from different backgrounds. So what might work for one person will not work for another, and you'll have to do something different for them.
There is no universal definition of leadership, and it's constantly changing and evolving with the times.
We've got great students, and I want them to continue being curious, thinking for themselves, being critical, and just opening themselves up to all kinds of ideas and theories, and not accept each one.
This past summer I worked for the Hudson Institute in Washington, D.C. It was an internship that came together rather late, and it did not come with an easy process. I had to actually start as an off-site intern and then kind of bully my way into coming on site, and I think Jepson really helped bring that ambition and that fire into me.
My Jepson internship was at Royal & Company, which is a direct marketing firm here in Richmond, Virginia.
I interned at St. Christopher's Institute on Leadership and Public Service.
I worked for Grabowski Global Strategies in Alexandria, Virginia.
This past summer I interned at Base Point Capital in Greenwich, Connecticut. It's a specialty finance company that focuses on consumer lending.
This summer I was a public relations and marketing intern for Telfair Museums, and I worked out of their Jepson Center for the Arts, which is a contemporary art museum.
I interned at Commencement International in Washington, D.C., and the most valuable lesson I learned from my internship about leadership was the importance of the informal structure of leadership.
This past summer I interned at Karama, Muslim Women Lawyers for Human Rights.
I interned at Providence Media, which was great. I was able to do what I love, work in the media. Something I also do at school is I work for the student newspaper, but being able to see the leaders of these magazines put together a magazine, work on the deadline,
It was a great experience. I was able to incorporate it into what I do at school.
I interned at a nonprofit in Cuenca, Ecuador called the Center for Inter-American Studies.
I worked at the Nancy Lieberman Charities in Dallas, Texas. It's a very small nonprofit that works with the inner city youth of Dallas, Texas.
I worked at a very small nonprofit in Rochester, New York, and the nonprofit was actually a hospice, and I had an amazing mentor who was my boss for my internship, and she really taught me how to be a compassionate leader and to treat people with respect no matter what stage of life they're in or whatever backgrounds they're coming from.
I interned at Bloomingdale's in their buying intern program, and one of the things that was really amazing is that one of the first pieces of advice I was given there was to read everything, and it sort of reminded me of the way we approach problems and critical thinking and problem solving here at Jepson, and how I had to really approach everything by looking at it from every angle, understanding that I'm not just selling dresses in a mall. We need to understand how current events impact our customers, how pop culture, different cultures in general, and I think that really gave me a leg up in the way that I approached anything that we were trying to tackle. And I think it served me well because I'm heading to work there next year.
One of the great things about teaching at Jepson is having the opportunity to work with students who are doing independent research projects, senior theses, honors theses, independent research, summer studies. It's really rewarding to work with them because they're pursuing their passions.
I'm writing my senior honors thesis on the targeted killing of terrorist leadership.
My research looks at the ethics of environmentalism for the individual as a consumer.
The way I entered this independent study is I took a folk music class with, it's called the Leadership of Folk Music and Protest Thought with Dr. McDowell last year. And our final assignment was to just write a paper about anything having to do with folk music. And I chose to write about the Grateful Dead and their origins and roots in folk music, which kind of inspired me to take on this whole independent study about their cultural leadership through the formation of their own, brand of music.
So I'm doing my independent study with Dean Peart on the economics of human trafficking.
I've done research with Dr. Hoyt for about 3 years now, and we've looked at topics such as diversity structures in organizations and perceptions of wealth inequality in the United States.
I'm actually taking an independent study right now with Dr. Pizzaio, in which we're tracking women's portrayal in video games to determine how this really impacts the player's worldview.
I'm writing a Jepson Senior Honors thesis about feminism on the internet. So what does it mean to declare yourself as a feminist on the internet today? What that means both for the individual and for the larger feminist movement, if we can still call it a movement. So that's been definitely a very big project. I'm excited that Jepson lets their students be so creative and independent while also providing a really excellent support system.
The beauty and the curse of a Jepson and a leadership degree is that you kind of have all sorts of doors open. So for my future, I really plan on exploring a lot of these different options. I'm hoping to possibly do some time abroad, teaching English with the Peace Corps. After that, hopefully coming back, maybe going to law school.
Well, I've paired leadership studies with healthcare and society, so I hope to work in a hospital in healthcare management and eventually work my way up.
I'm going to be working for M&T Bank in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and specifically within their management development program for retail banking.
After graduation, I'll be working for Protiviti as a risk and compliance consultant.
After graduation, I will be heading for more school to Georgetown University Law Center in Washington, D.C.
So I'm a double major in Jepson and the business school, and I'm looking to go into the financial services industry.
I will be joining JP Morgan as an HR analyst starting in July.
After graduation, I hope to return to Tanzania for a year to do public health research. My research primarily concerns the development of low-cost emergency medical care systems in the developing world.
Jepson School experience in one word: interactive.
Memorable. Unique.
Different.
Impactful.
Empowering.
One word, that's hard. Well, that's tough. Inspiring.
Unmatched.
Fascinating.
Eye-opening.
Motivating.
Enlightening.
Multifaceted.
Fantastic.
Engaging.
Community.
Exciting.
Thought-provoking.
Innovative.
Interdisciplinary.
Irreplaceable.
Eclectic.
Thrilling.
Transformative. Definitely.
Good afternoon. My name is Kirsten Soderlin, and I'm one of the Associate Deans at the Jepson School. And it's my pleasure to recognize some of our students who have served and represented the Jepson School for the last 2.5 years in a variety of different ways. And as our students know, it wouldn't be a recognition if we didn't have some wonderful Jepson swag for you. So those students that we are recognizing here today will actually be receiving a brand new piece of swag that nobody but the faculty have received yet. So this is hot off the presses. So what I'd like to do is it's about 15 students or so. I'd like to ask them to come up and join me on the stage. I'm gonna have you come up on these stairs over here, and Stephanie's going to give you your gift. But I'd like to have you come all the way across so we get the whole line of you up on the stage. So I can embarrass you for a few moments. And if we can hold the applause until we have the whole gang up here, that would be wonderful, okay? So it's all riding on you, Jordan, that you do this right. Jordan Chavez, can I ask you to come forward? Jordan has been a member of Jepson Student Government and Jepson Corps. Michelle Cleveland. Michelle has been a member of the Jepson Student Government Association. Molly Collins. Molly's been a member of the Jepson Student Government Association. Cassie D. Caesar. Cassie was a member of our Ethics Bowl team this year, which went to nationals. All the way over. Danielle DiPertoro, who was a member of Jepson Student Government as a sophomore senator. Olivia Dolmage, who was up here as one of our 4 lovely singers during our musical interlude. Win Han, who was a member of the 2014-2015 ILA case competition team. Abby Huth, who is a member of Jepson Corps. Eve Knapp, who was a member of Jepson Corps. Harry Lambert, who was a member of Jepson Corps and also a member of this year's Ethics Bowl team. Oliver Lee, who was one of our very talented singers and the ringleader for our musical interlude today. Matt Logan, who was one of our talented singers today. Caitlin McAllister, who is a member of Jepson Corps. Amelia Mitrotz, who is one of our wonderful singers. Olivia Mobade, who is a member of Jepson Corps. John Obeck, who is a member of Jepson Corps. Rebecca Robinson, who is one of our Ethics Bowl team members. Austin Shepard, who is a member of Jepson Corps, one of our team members for the ILA case competition last year, and an Ethics Bowl team member this year. And last but not least, Andrew Weisbrot, who served on JSGA all 3 years and is our president this year. So while we're waiting, Andrew, get you up. Do we have to move down a little more? Just embarrass you sufficiently. Okay. Can we have a round of applause? I can say it's been a pleasure to work with these students for the past 2.5 years, and I feel really grateful that I had the opportunity to work with them in these different capacities. And so as not to leave the rest of you hanging, the very special new swag, they tell me, is the hottest thing in the stores these days. Andrew Weisbrot helped consult about whether to purchase these or not. They are swell water bottles, but they are swell water bottles with the Jepson School of Leadership Studies printed on them. Thank you once again, guys, for all that you've done for the school these past few years. All right.
Dean Soderlin and her fancy gifts. Since this is my last year recognizing academic honors, my plan was to order the Jepson Hoodie Footy pajamas, and I was going to put them under your chair so I could say, now reach under your chairs and you'll find, but I never got around to it. So instead, today, Dean Peart and I will be giving out strands of rope and writing utensils. But they are nice strands of rope and nice writing utensils. The newest members of the Leadership Studies Honor Society have a 3.2, at least a 3.2 overall GPA, at least a 3.5 Leadership Studies GPA, which applies to many students in Jepson. The final criterion is that you be in the top 10% of your class. So when I call your name, and this is your final test as a Jepson student, please approach the stage from your left. Okay, ready? Erica Havens. Ellie Heitmiller. It's easier after the first one, isn't it? Harry Lambert. Amelia Mitratz. Aaron Purley. Austin Shepard. And finally, Molly Whitaker. Let's give them all a big hand, please. And you may exit off on that side. Thank you. I would now like to recognize students who completed our honors program, which includes a year-long thesis. There are 3 students. First, Molly Collins, and please come forward using the same rules. Molly's thesis is called The Ethics of Environmentalism for the Individual Consumer, and she was advised by Dr. Jessica Flanagan. Diane Gramillion, her honors thesis was called The Ethics of Leadership Decapitation. just war theory, and the targeted killing of al-Qaeda leaders. Her advisor was Dr. Hidalgo. And Amelia Mitrotz. Her thesis, go ahead, clap, I'll tell you. Her thesis was called I'm a Feminist, but Not Online, The Complications of Declaring a Feminist Digital Identity. She was advised by Dr. Bazayo. And a big hand for all, please. I now turn things back over to Dean Peart.
Thank you, Terry. It's now my pleasure to announce the Frederick M. Jablin Award for Undergraduate Research. This award is given in honor of Dr. Fred Jablin, a beloved professor at the Jepson School of Leadership Studies, one who had a passion for research and who delighted in working with undergraduates to foster their enthusiasm. The 2015-16 Jablin Award recipients is Amelia Mitrotz. As is perhaps evident from the just announced title of her thesis, Amelia's project is an interdisciplinary examination of feminism on the internet, amongst those who do not claim to be either feminists or anti-feminists. The thesis included a chapter on the history of feminist ideology, one on the evolution of anti-feminist media and technology, a chapter that used social science survey data, and then one that synthesized the above chapters using anthropological theory. That sounds like quite a research project. Congratulations again. And now it's my pleasure to announce the James McGregor Burns Award. This award, established in 1994 by Alice Andrews and Robert S. Jepson, Jr., is presented to a graduating senior in recognition of accomplishments as a student in the Jepson School of Leadership Studies. The recipient must demonstrate an outstanding grasp of the body of knowledge associated with leadership studies, excel in his or her studies at the university generally, be actively involved in service to the school, the university, and the community, show an ability to generalize and apply leadership theory and research in unique and imaginative ways, and display the capacity both to lead others and help others lead themselves. One of our Jepson School faculty indicated that this year's James McGregor Burns Award recipient is, quote, one of the most gifted students he has had during his nearly 13 years at the University of Richmond. He noted that the recipient is not only intellectually curious, but also sophisticated. Another faculty member reminisced that this student always brought outside ideas to the classroom, attending city planning or education board meetings and bringing actual policy decisions back to his critical thinking class as students there discussed systems theory and argumentation. This year's recipient has served as a cultural advisor here on campus, worked with university parking services appeals, of which we all appreciate. Served for 4 years on the Richmond College Student Government Association and has been a member of Jepson School's Ethics Bowl team, the one that went national this year. Perhaps the recipient's most significant contribution outside the classroom is his work with UR Emergency Medical Services and as a member of the Richmond Ambulance Authority. The 2016 James McGregor Burns Award recipient is a student who has gone out of his way to contribute significantly both inside and outside the classroom. It's my great pleasure to present the James McGregor Burns Award to Harry Lambert. We'll now hear from JSGA President Andrew Risebrough.
All right. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, friends, family, faculty members, staff, and my fellow members of the class of 2016. It is truly an honor to stand before you today for the last time, having represented you as JSGA president for the past year. When I first arrived at the University of Richmond, I did not know what the Jepson School of Leadership Studies was. Even though I took Dr. Soderlund's from Harvard to Hogwarts, it was a pre-orientation program and roadmap, for those of you that don't know. I still didn't really discover what the Jepson School was until I took my first leadership class the spring of my freshman year with Dr. Crystal Hoyt. It was leadership in the social sciences. This single class changed me as a person. I knew immediately that I wanted to study at the Jepson School of Leadership Studies that spring of my freshman year. After that, I think I changed my major about 4 times, but eventually I decided to major in leadership studies and minor in business administration. I am so grateful for my time at the Jepson School because it is a journey. We are constantly being challenged to think differently, to think critically, to think in ways we never knew existed, and that's what makes it fun. The Jepson School attracts critical thinkers, analyzers, people filled with passion, inquisitive minds, and service-oriented community members. This is what makes the Jepson School unique. We are from so many different backgrounds and from all over the world. When we're having debates in class, we can have differing viewpoints, and they all could be right. We are able to learn and grow from each other, and that skill is invaluable. Every class I took at the Jepson School changed my way of thinking, and I'm sure many people can relate to that as well. I would like to impose on you some pieces of advice. The first is don't be afraid to change. Coming from a very small town of about 3,000 people in south central Pennsylvania, I was very set in my ways, and I was afraid of change at first. I grew up knowing what I knew. I was not intellectually stimulated or exposed to the world around me. When I came to the University of Richmond and the Jepson School, that all changed. My world was thrown upside down, and I am so grateful for that. Being able to see different worldviews helped me grow as a person, and because of that, I was honored to be able to travel around the world to places that I never even imagined. One of the most memorable classes that I took was Justice and Civil Society with Dr. Javier Hidalgo. This class opened up my mind like I never could have imagined. I learned about systematic oppression, poverty, and social injustices. I was able to see firsthand the problems that society faces, especially right here in Richmond. I went on a police ride-along on a Friday night, and Richmond is very different at 2 a.m. on a Friday night. I was able to have meaningful conversations with the police about their experiences here, and this changed my world. Being able to see these issues firsthand made the problems much more real for me. You can watch the news, you can read books, or you can even see movies, but you cannot fully grasp the injustices that exist until you're sitting in the front of a police car. Being able to connect theory and practice is extremely vital to the learning process, and I'm so fortunate that Jepson emphasizes this. They say that everything happens for a reason, and I am a firm believer in that. Do not be afraid of change. The second piece of advice that I have is to roll with the punches. Things may not turn out the way you think they will, and that's okay. There are many of us graduating who know what they're going to do. They're going to work for Fortune 500 companies, volunteer with organizations like the Peace Corps, travel, or start their own businesses. However, there are still many that don't know what they're doing, or even know what they want to do, and that's okay as well. Don't rush into something just because other people are figuring their lives out right now. Take the time to figure out what means most to you. You will be rewarded more in the end. Find out what your passions are and pursue them, and do not take no for an answer. The Jepson School taught me that you can do anything you put your mind to, and I fully believe in that. In the fall, I interviewed with what I thought would be my dream company, and I thought I nailed the interview. However, 2 days later, I received a call saying I didn't get the job, and I was devastated. I beat myself up for a while, but then a couple months later, I interviewed for another company and instantly fell in love with them. I'm going to be working for that company now with some of my friends from the Jepson School, and I couldn't be happier. I realized in hindsight that the dream company that I thought I would be working for just wasn't in the plans right now. Things might not happen the way you think they will. Just roll with the punches. The last piece of advice that I have is that I want to leave you with is to cherish the relationships around you. We have spent the last 4 years getting to know each other, and this does not have to end. Whether you are staying in Richmond, moving across the country, or moving on the other side of the world, stay in contact with those you've grown fond of. These relationships mean so much, and I hope that you have found people that have shaped you the way that I have. These will be the friends that will be there when you move into your first house, when you marry your first love or have your first children. One of the fundamental components of leadership studies is understanding human relationships. Don't let them fade away. They say that when one door closes, another door opens. However, I think of it more as one door begins to close, it remains slightly ajar, and a million other doors appear before you. However, the door never really fully closes. It will always remain a part of you. Congratulations to us, the class of 2016. Great. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today's ceremony, Dr. Richard L. Morrill. From September 1988 through June 1998, Dr. Morrill served as the 7th president of the University of Richmond. Upon his retirement from the presidency, he became chancellor, and from July 1998 to June 2004, he held the Richard L. Morrill Distinguished University Chair in Ethics and Democratic Values. A scholar of the history of religious ideas and ethics, he has an enduring interest in the foundation of human values and democratic practice. A strong proponent of liberal arts education, Chancellor Morrill has a long-standing scholarly commitment to the ethical capabilities and presuppositions that sustain a democratic community. In his writings, teaching, and administrative roles, he has addressed the connections between fundamental values and strategic leadership. A 1989 Washington Post article about the creation of the Jepson School quotes Dr. Morrill, responding to a concern that Bob Jepson raised about education not providing its constituents with a basis for strong leadership. Dr. Morrill said, quote, "We have become sophisticated in our methodology. But what does that mean about our compassion? A just society? My responsibility as a citizen? Liberal arts has gotten away from training young men and women to go run society. Our sense of obligation has been lost." This comment embodies the reason the Jepson Student Government Association invited Dr. Morrill to give today's keynote address. Dr. Morrill was intimately involved in the creation and launch of the Jepson School of Leadership Studies, and since his tenure as president, he has continued to be an ardent supporter of the school. He has taught Jepson seminars on strategic leadership, spoken at Prelude, and supported the Jepson School's John Marshall International Center for the study of statesmanship. He served as a panelist for a program to commemorate Kenneth Ruscio's tenure as dean of the school, which was entitled Organized Anarchy, Challenges of Leading Academic Communities, and attended the 20th anniversary symposium on the state of leadership studies. Dr. Morrill's commitment to service is reflected in the numerous boards and associations of which he has been a part. He served as chairman of the College Commission, president of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, and board member of Central Fidelity Banks Incorporated, the Teagle Foundation, the Williamsburg Investment Trust, the Library of Virginia Foundation, the World Affairs Council of Richmond, the Tredegar Corporation, the Albemarle Corporation, and the Greater Richmond Chamber Foundation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Richard Morrill.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a really distinct joy and a pleasure for me to be honored to be invited to celebrate with today's or tomorrow's graduates from Jepson this very special moment in their lives. Having watched you, having seen the video several times now, I know that you are a happy band of graduates, and I've seen the energy and the talent that you so amply possess. I congratulate you on your achievements and on your compelling prospects for the future. I've also noted the tightness of the bonds that weave you with your classmates and with the faculty and staff of Jepson. Those have become celebrated elements in the story and the legacy of the Jepson School. My wife Martha and I have had the great privilege of becoming close friends with Bob and Alice Jepson. And I talked with Bob the other day and said, "Is there anything I ought to pass along to this year's graduates?" And he said, "Just tell them," and this is his kind of enthusiastic rhetoric, "the most abundant forms of congratulations, the fullest and deepest recognition that you can." He then went on to say something that I was quite aware of. that he has, in fact, recently received all kinds of recognition as a leader in Savannah, Georgia, where he resides, in the state of Georgia, on every list of business leaders, Hall of Fame members. And he said, you know, some of that is very gratifying, but please tell everyone that the most significant achievement has been the creation of the Jepson School, and it's that in which I take the greatest pride and the greatest relish. In effect, what I'd like to do as one of the many founders of the Jepson School is to put this enterprise in a bit of perspective. I want to be modest, so I won't call it the genius of the Jepson School, in which many hands shared, but the perspective that I have may be of interest to you. I can tell you that we have come a long way from those early days when I'd go to a Rotary Club meeting or elsewhere, an alumni gathering, and people would pull up my shirt sleeves and say, Dr. Morrow, you know you can't teach leadership. And I would say, well, that depends on how you want to think about it. I think it's pretty clear that you can learn leadership because through experience and practice and forms of life, somehow some people seem to learn it. And so, speaking now from experience of many years, I think that we can see how one learns leadership. It was for me a great privilege and honor that when I finished my work as president, the Jepson faculty invited me to teach a couple of courses in Jepson. And as I did that, I found the formal study of leadership became for me, in effect, another career path. Because since those days, I've done several books on leadership and academic leadership and gone on to be privileged to preside over a national foundation focused on what is effective in student learning and trying to spread the word about that. And also right now to be often very busy working with presidents and boards of colleges and universities as a kind of advisor on leadership. I told a story a few weeks ago to Caitlin McAllister, who came by the office for a chat. And I thought you might like to see something or learn something of what we chatted about. Some of the sparkle of Jepson came very brightly into view in 1992, which was the year we opened Jepson Hall. We'd had courses for a couple of years, but this in some ways was the inauguration of a new dimension in the program, almost 25 years ago, when I was just a boy president. The keynote speaker who came to that event and spoke about interactive leadership as a military leader was General Norman Schwarzkopf. He, of course, was a national hero because he had just finished presiding over the rapid defeat of Saddam Hussein, leading an international coalition. A few months later, it turned out that the University of Richmond hosted the second presidential debate in the Robins Center with President George Bush Sr., with Governor Bill Clinton, and with business leader Ross Perot. The campus was crawling with thousands of journalists from around the world. And if I could get into the Robins Center, if the Secret Service let me, sometimes they didn't, I found in there dozens of University of Richmond students, including Jepson students, who were running errands and doing chores for the debate organizers and for all of these journalists. During the debate, President Bush was caught looking at his watch, and all the rest is history. A few months later, Professor Shula and a local organization invited Mikhail Gorbachev to come and speak on the campus. My wife Martha and I presided over a dinner at the president's home on campus, and we invited bankers and lawyers and business leaders from across Richmond and the region. And we were struck by the wit and the grace and the charm of Mr. Gorbachev and his wife, Raisa, these two, I suppose, communist leaders who found it very easy to interact with a horde of capitalists. As we moved to the dinner table under a tented patio, my wife and I were startled because Mr. Gorbachev's handlers had moved the place cards. Mr. Jepson was supposed to sit next to Mr. Gorbachev, but it ended up that my wife Martha was placed between the two Gorbachevs. And as we sat down, she looked across at me, mouthed silently the word, "Help!" In the middle of the dinner, Mr. Gorbachev looked around at the president's home, which is a large edifice, and he said, "Do you own this home?" I said, "No, sir, this is a professional residence for the president." Then, in a question that few of us in Virginia would ever believe one could ask, seated at dinner, he said, "What are you paid?" And I thought, well, materialism is part of this culture, and then I said, well, it's the same really as the President of the United States. The president's salary had been stuck for quite a while at a moderately high level, but nonetheless, it was the best I could think of to change the topic. So we went from there to the Robin Center, where Mr. Gorbachev gave an elegant address in which he reminded us that it's not only Americans who are trying to practice democracy, we should recognize there are other forms as well. So the students from the Jepson School, if we take that 1 year, had a chance to look through a window of history, part of which was opened widely because of the creation of the Jepson School. As the work of Jepson unfolded, its influence both on and beyond the campus really took hold. Much of that influence could be traced to Jepson's uniqueness, to be sure, but it was also clear that a new kind of interactive teaching was emerging in the Jepson School. The faculty in Jepson had seized upon the whole notion of engaged learning in a way that helped to crystallize that awareness, I think, all across the campus. It happened at that moment we were preparing a strategic plan. And in the process of doing that, I would often ask students to come by the house and talk about their experience at the university. And often in the group of student leaders would be students in Jepson. And as I began to get more clear notions of precisely what was occurring, both in the classroom and in the internships that were now growing rapidly in Jepson, I began to get a sense of what engagement in learning really meant. And the title of that 1994 strategy plan was Engagement in Learning. Now, it happens that that was a prophetic moment because within the next decade in higher education, the motif of adjustment became one of the touchstones of modern higher education ways of learning. It meant many things in many ways. There was a national inventory called the National Survey of Student Engagement that began to focus on the benefits that flow from what are now called high learning impact practices. And when research is done on how students best learn, the relative gain in student achievement, cognition, effectiveness is closely related to the number of high impact practices in which students engage. At Jepson, you'd have to count the practices on one hand that are not high impact. And I say that because after my retirement from the presidency, in teaching several seminars at Jepson, I found that those students were easily the best students I had ever taught in my teaching career. Another signal achievement of the Jepson School has been in the richness of its programs, its seminars, its publications. The Jepson School, as you know, has its own publication series. And the books that come out are filled with research and reflection about leadership from all sorts of different angles and fields. The latest Jepson book is called Frontiers in Spiritual Leadership, The Better Angels of Our Nature. The essays cross every boundary you can imagine and are filled with all kinds of studies in disparate areas. So, for example, there's a chapter on St. Augustine's capabilities as a bishop leader. There's also a fascinating essay on women leaders in the early church. There's also one on spiritual education at the court of Louis XIV. And as you read these and begin to connect them, you say, well, wait a minute, I mean, these things don't have anything in common. What is this? And then, however, as you look at them more closely, you find, in fact, that there is this kind of remarkable and unexpected series of linkages. Each of the chapters actually describes the relationship between what we might call ordinary circumstance, the everyday ways in which we have to connect, if you will, with the immediate tasks at hand, getting it done, transacting events. But also, each chapter lifts to a higher level where people are pushing to find the way things might be done. And so the tension becomes very evident between, if you will, the ordinariness of life and the higher aspirations of what could and might be. The editors of this collection are Professor Allison of our psychology department, Chaplain Coker, and also Professor Goethals of the Leadership School. And they find a way in their introduction to nicely express some of these points. We actually feel a sense of motivation and elevation when we begin to find ourselves in the presence of generosity, of kindness, of compassion, of forgiveness. And those things actually resonate even within our physiology. We feel a sense of warmth in our own physical bodies. So the chapters in this book actually are focusing on transcendent values, some might say, on things like justice and reconciliation and liberty and equality and wholeness, compassion and fulfillment. Those standards, in effect, are the source often of the inspiration that leaders find to empower leadership in many contexts. My offering in this book sheds some perspective on the distinctiveness both of my work before I became a university president and some of the things that have happened since then. In my little work, I compare the thought of James McGregor Burns with an eminent contemporary philosopher by the name of Charles Taylor, probing the depth of values. Now, it happens that in 1989, I got on a plane and flew to Albany, New York, rented a car, and drove to Williamstown, Massachusetts, the location of Williams College and of Professor James McGregor Burns. I had learned from the former president of Williams College that Professor Burns would be retiring, and also that he was an eminently congenial person and an easy person with whom to work. So since Professor Burns had been, a celebrated leading author of political and historical studies, many of you will know and recognize his wonderful history of the leadership of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And also at that time, he had, about a decade before, finished a major study of leadership that broke the ground for, in effect, what has become now a field of study. So we invited him to come to Richmond and to join the faculty of the Leadership School as a senior scholar so that he might interact with the burgeoning new faculty of the Jepson School. And he did that over 2 terms and contributed significantly to the life of the school. All this was fascinating for me because much earlier in my career, he was speaking at a college, and someone sent him to my office to talk about the book he was working on leadership. And we had a long discussion about the nature of values, because I had written a little book, or was writing a little book, actually on moral education and the nature of values. And so to see that eminent scholar come and join us closed a circle, but opened lots of doors. As James McGregor Burns' work on leadership continued, it became clear that for him, leadership is simply drenched in values. And it's probably then no coincidence that our faculty, working with him and finding their own unique ways in the study of leadership, have made the study of ethics the linchpin of our curriculum. Just ask any students about the senior leadership capstone course, and you will learn the importance, the rigor, and the significance of that experience. It seems true in the various positions of authority that I've been privileged to hold that that is the right focus for a program to study leadership. It takes many forms. Often it is knowing as a leader how to articulate and reason about complex ethical questions. Sorting those things out becomes a very important part of communicating, certainly with a campus community. But there's another dimension to the presence of ethics and values that is also centrally significant, and that is being able to articulate and formulate the values of the community, the things about which most people care, what matter to them, that includes certainly reason, but also the passions of their lives. Now, that side of values and ethics becomes complicated because you quickly and easily learn what people want, but it's not always easy to describe the worth of what is wanted. So that moves us then to this very significant question that we always are wrestling with, I think, in Jepson courses and experiences, is how do leaders help others to sort out, to analyze, to gauge, to evaluate, to measure the worth of what is wanted. I found a very interesting statement about this in the work of Charles Taylor. He suggests trying to describe what he calls the concept of fullness. We all see our lives and/or the space wherein we live our lives as having a certain moral, spiritual shape. Somewhere, in some activity or condition, lies a fuller, a richer, a deeper, more worthwhile, more admirable, more what it should be. Taylor recounts, and we all could, many examples of where these ideas of fullness take hold in our experience. It may well be in the pursuit of a professional objective and an achievement that gives one deep satisfaction, or it could be in following artistic works of creativity that simply transform your sense of yourself, or obviously in committing yourself to a path of serving justice and offering assistance and compassion to those in need. It may be in trying, in effect, to capture the awe of the experience of nature, and these days, to preserve it for future generations. Those kinds of passions always press us to use larger language, elevated language, trying to say what it is that gives us significance in these wider kinds of experiences, in these deeper forms of questing forever for larger scopes of meaning. The idea of fullness obviously enriches and helps us to understand how values, then, are, in effect, at the heart of leadership. And it also gives us clues that in trying to find the worth of what we want, We are not simply at sea. There are methods by which we can press what we want into the questions of worth, and I think we do so almost every day. We say to ourselves, well, will that endure? Will that serve the widest possible set of people? Will that, in effect, push toward the universal? Does that allow us to show respect for all conditions of humankind? Does it allow us to repair the injuries that we've done in the past to others? So we are not in a sphere in which simply wanting is the end place, but we come in leadership studies to know more the tests and the criteria of valuing. What I expect is that every student who is graduating tomorrow has developed just those kinds of capacities to reason, to think, to experience about what is worth wanting, and to relate theories to actions, to respect dissenting voices, and to craft effective strategies that at the same time honor the dignity of every person. Those are the goals of the powerful and transformative learning of which you, the graduates of tomorrow, have been given. You, as our graduates, will take up your place now in the legacy that is Jepson, because now it is within you. You will take with you as well the pride and the confidence of your faculty and mentors at Jepson, as well as that same pride and joy that come from your family and your friends. You will carry as well the hopes of a world that will now rely on you and your very special gifts to shape the best possibilities for tomorrow. Godspeed.
Thank you, Dr. Morrill. That was wonderful. At this time, I'd like to go off the script. This is now an award that is not listed on your program, which I would like to make. I'd like to ask Dr. Joanne Chula to come to the stage. It's my pleasure now to recognize a member of the faculty at the school, Dr. Joanne Chula. In addition to being a mentor and teacher of critical thinking and leadership ethics, as well as her broad scholarly imprint in leadership studies, Joanne is our resident historian, someone who can always answer questions about the intentions of those who founded the school. That is because she was an integral part of the founding, arriving at the Jepson School before its doors opened. The University of Richmond recognizes faculty who have achieved the 25-year milestone. It can't be possible. As Dr. Chula has, with a medallion to mark the special occasion. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Chula for 25 years of service. Rather heavy. Oh, it's turned around. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Finally, I'd like to invite Dr. Terry Price to come forward. Dr. Price has served as our Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs during all of your years at the university. What you may not realize is that Dr. Price will soon step down from this role, although I think you have gleaned this because he was much more relaxed while he gave those awards earlier today than he has been other years. He'll soon step down from this role and turn his attention more fully to the classroom and to his scholarship. In his time as Associate Dean, Dr. Price has served countless students, ensuring that they obtain the classes they need to graduate, and perhaps more importantly, supporting their academic achievements and endeavors. He's done this whether they've been abroad studying at Cambridge or at the University of Richmond. He's overseen the growth and the added complexity in our course offerings. He's led curricular reviews that improved the major and minor. He led ethics-related initiatives amongst the faculty and the students. He built our Jepson at Cambridge program. He led the faculty's revision of their tenure and promotion processes. He implemented their mentoring program, their classroom visit policies, and most recently, he developed the Science Leadership Scholars Program. For all of these accomplishments, for making the Jepson School of Leadership Studies a better school, the faculty unanimously agreed that Terry deserves the Jepson School's Award for Leadership and Service. Please join me in recognizing Dr. Terry Price. And now I know that I stand between you and the time that you've got to spend with your faculty and your families, and so I'll be very brief. I want to leave you with a few words from the great 18th century moral philosopher, Adam Smith. What can be added to the happiness of a person who has a clear conscience? In the years ahead, I wish you a clear conscience, continued curiosity, deep and broad learning, and prosperity. And now I'd like to ask you to join us for a reception. If you depart the room and turn to your left, it's in the building directly beside here. And please pick up the inserts that list those awards that we've given today. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.